So here's the open evening presentation for government and politics. So if you're thinking about taking government and politics, hopefully this will give you an idea of what we do and why you should do it. Also maybe give you a bit more idea about maybe why you shouldn't if you're not sure about whether to take it. So in government and politics, we do it in 3 different branches. The first one we start off with in year 12 is all about the politics of the UK. And once we've done that, we spend probably about 2 terms doing that. We move on to political ideas, and then finally the politics of America. So straight away, you should hopefully get an idea of whether you're going to enjoy this. So if you're interested in stuff to do with the UK and its politics, do you have a strong opinion on Brexit? What do you think of Boris? Those sort of things, straight away, you can get an idea of whether you're going to be interested. So with government and politics, the first paper is all about the UK. So on my side, you'll do about the Constitution. So this is a really interesting thing to compare with America. So where can you find our Constitution? What rights does it give us? Have we really got a Constitution that's evolving, or does it need really changing and updating? Then we look at Parliament. We say, is the UK really a dictatorship with the sham of a democracy? Does it actually work? We'd find out about the Prime Minister and whether he's first among equals, whether we've got a very presidential style of leadership, and whether our Prime Minister is sort of ruling in the correct manner. We'd look at things that happened this week, like whether Priti Patel should have resigned for ministerial bullying. And we'll have discussions about that before we look at the EU and then the judiciary. So my side is very much about the government. So it's to do with how we're ruled, and whether it's right, whether it's democratic. On the other side of the course, you look at democracy and participation. So we look at things to do with whether we've got a good democracy. How can you guys make a difference? Because you're not enfranchised, so how can you make a difference to politics? We look at referenda, whether they're a good thing or a bad thing. And we look at why people vote for who they do. So you might be able to predict how someone's going to vote just because of their age, their gender, or maybe even their ethnicity. So you can get lots of predictions and interesting things. And finally, look at some famous elections and how Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are getting more power as it's slowly being devolved. Once we've done that, we move into political ideas. So for this one, you learn about all the theory that underpins all of those really interesting things that you've been learning about. So things like liberalism and conservatism and socialism too. So you can compare what those ideologies are like. So you can find out, are humans evil? You can think about, is it right for the government to be able to tell us what we can and can't do? Should we be taxed highly, or should actually the government leave us alone? So these are really big, interesting questions, and students so far have had a big change in their opinions, which has been really interesting as they've started to challenge what they think. And on the other side of the course, you look at feminism, so first, second, and third wave feminism, and you compare them. And we look at big questions to do with multiculturalism. So do we have a tyranny of the majority where we ignore these individual discussions about rights of smaller groups? Or do we let smaller groups control how the rest of society functions? So it's quite an interesting one. And that we teach for usually about 1.5 terms. So usually the summer term of year 12, and then we finish by usually October half term of year 13. Now the final paper, if you've been listening, you'll notice is paper 2. Now this paper is where we compare what's happening in America with what's happened in Britain. So we look at the American Constitution and we say, well, which one's better? Is the Constitution in the UK better, or is it better in America? We look at how Congress functions and we compare it to Parliament. So how do they work? Which one's better? Is there one that's more efficient than the other? And we then compare the president too. So we'll compare the styles of Trump, Obama, all the way back to Nixon, and see how they've changed. And finally, we'll look at civil rights. And we'll look at the really key rulings that have taken place to do with civil rights and the current Black Lives Matter protests, and see how much has actually changed for different groups in America. On the other side, we also do about, well, why did Biden win? How did he manage to win the election? And we'll look at 3 other elections too, from Reagan's win in 1980. We'll look at Nixon's victory in 1968. And you'll be able to compare what makes people win in elections. Why do other ones lose? You'll find out about how good the democracy is in America, what the political parties group, and how do pressure groups work. So that's quite interesting, because we look at things like the NRA, which is the National Rifle Association, and why it is that America has refused to change their gun laws, and interesting things like that. So it's a really nice comparison to what's happening in Britain, and it's a nice way of revising the stuff that we've already done. So you're assessed in 3 parts. So there's no coursework, it's all exams, and it's all written. So it's 3, all of which are assessed through essays, and all of the papers are 2 hours long. So this is where we want you to get really a 6 in an essay writing subjects. That might be English, history, it could be geography, it could be philosophy and ethics. One of the subjects where you're asked to argue, because that's what you have to do. You have to argue your point in essays. So knowing how Peel works is really useful. And each of the papers are equally weighted, so you need to do all 3 of them well to be able to get a good grade. One final bit is whether you should take it. So students are always asking, what should I take at A-level? Now, my advice is always take the things that you're interested in. So your parents aren't sitting the exam, you are. You have to study it for the next 2 years, so take something that you care about. If you're watching this thinking, my mum and dad are getting more excited about this than I am, don't take it. Take something you want to do. If you're interested in current affairs, if you're interested in the news, it's brilliant. If you've got strong opinions on Brexit, on Boris, on Trump, take it. If you think you like to argue about things, you're maybe thinking of going into law, you're interested in history, you're interested in sociology, you're interested in English, this subject goes really well. One final subject, surprisingly, that politics goes really well with is maths. So if you're interested in maths, it can work very well, because you can get a job in psephology where you study elections and voting, which is a really lucrative career if anyone's thinking about doing that. So my big advice to you, only take it if you're interested in it, because I think it's fantastic, but you won't if you're not interested in those things. Right. Any more questions, or you need to know anything, these are the school contact details, and if you don't know the contact details for me, my email is afuller@tuxford-ac.org.uk. Thank you, hope that was useful.